found the body of a child lying in a small stream near a culvert.
Investigators have come together over the murder of a little girl.
The most likely cause of death was suffocation.
But this case is different, because this murder happened more than 60 years ago. These are the cold case detectives, pursuing justice in crimes often decades old. A team of investigators and forensic experts at South Wales Police.
Explain to me how your semen is on
I don't know how anything.
They're committed to solving some of the most baffling murders and sex crimes which have gone undetected for years.
Horrific, horrific.
I just hope he does get punished.
Using the latest developments in forensic science to uncover new evidence, they're determined to put some of the most dangerous criminals behind bars.
The time will come where we will be knocking on their door and their world is going to cave in.
You're under arrest on suspicion of rape. You do not have to say anything, but anything you do say may be given in evidence.
So we're here to discuss a potential cold case forensic review into the murder of Carol Stevens, a 6-year-old girl who was abducted from Cardiff in 1959. There are bereaved families of people who've been murdered, and they've got unanswered questions. If we've got the ability to be able to provide those answers, we serve the public. So we must do that. We must take those opportunities to do that. These are scene photographs of the deposition site. So you can have a look at those at your leisure, really. But yeah, we've got everything she was wearing when she was taken. We've got. So we've got a cardigan, we've got a dress, we've got a skirt and spectacles.
Carol Ann Stevens' killer has evaded justice for more than 60 years. But police now believe that recent advances in forensic science might reveal traces of the killer's DNA on the little girl's clothes.
Generically speaking, we can look for touch DNA, which we would do as a matter of course now with cases, but the chance of us finding anything is going to be quite slim. But also then body fluids, blood, semen, saliva, we can have a look for things like that.
This is a 60-year-old case, so say the person who did it, let's assume that he was 20. He's going to be 80 now. But he could be 30 then, so he could be 90, he could be deceased. So this is probably a last resort for us. So let's do what we can to try and provide some answers. I'd be happy with that.
It still means an awful lot
But
to a lot of people.
It's a horrible case, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Seasoned detective Jerry Blake has his own personal reasons for wanting justice for Carol.
In 1959, I was a young boy, 7.5 years of age, and I was actually in Sunday school with Carol on the couple of days before she went missing. There was someone that I knew, and she was murdered. You would like to see that justice is done on a personal matter because you knew the person, and then, of course, on a professional aspect, there's an undetected crime.
A child at the time, Jerry is now a cold case investigator, and this case has been a driving force throughout his career. Now, he finally has the chance to get justice for his friend.
She was in school with myself and my two sisters, and of course we remember the event very, very well. I knew Carol very well. Carol was an innocent girl, a very chatty girl, very friendly girl. She did have a propensity to wander, but people would look out for the young children and make sure that no harm would come to you. That was the type of neighbourhood that we had here in Cathays. This is 9 Malliford Street, the home of Carol Stevens. When Carol went missing, there was great emotion here. Everyone was saddened by the whole incident. And of course, it had a huge impact on the people in this community. So coming back here is quite sad and so poignant. It brings back so many bad memories, really, to think of that poor girl who was taken off the street. Could have been any one of us.
Growing up in Cathays at my time, it was quiet. People just went about their daily lives. We went to school, we had the library. Nothing bad happened. It just didn't. It was a nice, quiet, ordinary family area.
Jill Ward was 13 years old in 1959 and remembers Carol Ann Stevens from the neighbourhood.
She was a quiet little girl with glasses. And she would come down into our street and play with the younger children. And she was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
This used to be the old corner shop, Wilkins' shop. Carol would run an errand for her mother and attended the shop and to buy sweets as well. Carol then left the shop. She walked back along the street. And then later on in the day, she was seen knocking on the window of a car door that was parked in Fair Oak Road, which is just outside the cemetery. That was our last known sighting of Carol Stevens.
When it happened, there was a big sort of murmuring amongst the adults, I suppose, that she'd wandered off somewhere and she'd be found. Then, of course, when she wasn't found, there was a great rush for mums or dads who didn't take their children to school. They suddenly started to take them to school and meeting them because they were frightened. And who's to say that he wouldn't come back and pick up another child? Because as far as we were concerned, this evil person had gone round in a car and taken a child off the street, just like that, as easy as that, which is very frightening. I can remember, obviously, a detective coming round the houses, speaking to my mum and all the other mums. When did they last see her? Had they noticed anything strange, cars, whatever? I can't remember them speaking to any of us as children, and that could have been as a protective sort of thing because they didn't want to frighten us. For everyone involved, it would be wonderful if they could solve it and could finally find out who actually did it. It'll put a lot of minds at rest, I think.
This case is undetected, and it would mean so much, not just for the family, but also for the neighbours as well, who've always thought and asked, whatever happened to Carol Stevens?
After decades of unanswered questions, the team now prepares to examine the 60-year-old evidence for DNA in the hope of finally identifying Carol's killer. As well as unsolved murder cases, the cold case detectives are also reviewing more than 300 historical sex crimes from the archives. A mammoth task, codenamed Operation Dudley. DNA will also be key in their mission to bring these sex offenders to justice, decades after their crimes. Cold case investigator James Phillips is working through the list of unsolved sex attacks dating back to the 1980s. He's looking for cases where there's now a realistic chance of finding offenders' DNA from the historical evidence.
So I've started on the team about 2 months ago. There's lots of improvements in the forensic science world. We're looking at now at options and possibilities of reviewing some of those exhibits that have been taken and sending them off to be examined again, and hopefully with some hits. When I joined the police force, 1988, DNA wasn't a thing, whereas previously you would need a large amount of blood, large amount of semen in perhaps early 90s for a kind of a profile. Now, they can pick up DNA profiles from a slap on the back of on a hand on someone's face. It's just amazing.
Okay, this interview is being visually recorded.
And a DNA breakthrough has already led the team to snare a rapist.
Explain to me how your semen
I don't know how anything was found on anybody.
Okay, this interview is being visually recorded. I'm police support staff Andy Price, 56655.
This man is being questioned on suspicion of rape. He's been arrested by the cold case team after advances in forensic science identified traces of his DNA on the clothing of a woman who was raped 30 years ago.
In 1991, the victim was walking through a park in Cardiff, early evening, walking her dogs. She was brutally attacked, raped, and as a result of those injuries, she's required numerous operations. There must have been an horrendous attack.
3 decades later, a tiny semen stain on the victim's clothing revealed a DNA profile of the attacker. By comparing this profile with a national DNA database, the team got a match with a man called Anthony Carling.
Every person that has come into custody for a recordable offence has their DNA taken. As a matter of course, it's like having your fingerprints taken and a photograph taken.
For 30 years, 64-year-old Carling thought he got away with his crime. Now, he has some explaining to do.
It's amazing. It's like, let's get on with it. Let's go and get him. It's just fantastic.
The time is exactly 1500 hours. Do you recall ever seeing a female walking dogs?
How the hell would I remember 30 years ago if somebody was walking the dog?
This female has got your semen on her at some point. So that made me jog the memory.
Mm-hmm. Well, how would my semen be on somebody that I don't know?
That's why you're sat there. That's a very good question. Can you answer it?
No, I can't.
Because she's given us an account of why your semen is on her.
I haven't a clue why it's on it.
Short on answers, Carling is charged with the rape. And 30 years after he brutally attacked a woman, today he must face up to his crime in court. Carling pleads guilty. Back at base, the cold case team wait anxiously for Carling to be sentenced.
Hi, Paul. Any news? Oh, that's fantastic. That's unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah, it's a great result. Yeah, we were hoping for double figures, and, well, that's even a bit better, isn't it? So, oh, he deserves that. Oh, that's great. Thanks, Paul. That's fantastic. Cheers, mate. Bye, bye-bye. 12 years.
Bloody hell.
He deserves that. He deserves at least that.
Oh,
At least, yeah.
Doesn't he? Do you know what I mean? He's put her through hell.
that is brilliant. And she was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
After 30 years of evading justice, with the overwhelming forensic evidence presented to the court by the team, Anthony Carling receives a 12-year sentence for the vicious rape in 1991.
12 years is just it's a phenomenal result, really. Although it's happened a long time ago, that file's never closed, and we're always trying to investigate and find and get a bit of closure for that victim.
The conviction of Carling for rape is an important result for the team. But there's no time to rest on their laurels. Seasoned detective Jerry Blake is on a mission to crack a case that has gone unsolved for over 60 years. The murder of his childhood friend, Carol Ann Stevens.
I would be absolutely elated. One has to consider the background of this person and were there any other offences committed. So by progressing the science and the forensic aspect of this case, we don't know what we'll get at the end of it.
Key to solving the case will be understanding what lines of inquiry were followed back in the 1950s.
If the files are here, hopefully they're going to be in this section, but we can check the other sections as well.
Right.
Incredibly, most of the case papers have survived.
It's amazing as you go through some of these. You from my service, I remember some of the names and
yes.
some of the cases. What about this one? That's the only box there?
That is the only box, yes.
Well, that's fantastic for a start. It gives us a start, Caroline, doesn't it?
It does.
Unfortunately, they don't all appear to be in numerical order. Really and truly, patience is a virtue. It tests your eyesight. It's just a matter of wading through it. I joined the police force in the late 70s. And I was enthusiastic to become a policeman. I was in my 20s when I joined. It was something that I wanted to do for a long, long time. I didn't have the confidence to apply for the job. I was in engineering before I became a policeman, but it was something that I wanted to do. I think once you're a policeman, always a policeman. You're a service. You want to serve the public, the community around you, and be helpful as much as you can.
Amongst the boxes of evidence, Jerry and the team find the original witness statements taken by the police in 1959 from the residents of Cateys in Cardiff, the area where Carol went missing.
They're making reference to Carol being, in inverted commas, the chatterbox. It appeared that she was going to be going somewhere that morning. There's a shopkeeper that says she would normally stay and chat. She didn't. It appears that she was more excited than normal.
Just a bit, Jerry, about that lady you said about the garage. She saw Carol Stevens in a green-coloured motorcar.
Green,
which
right.
might have been a Morris Minor. But then she was not sure of the colour. She put it to green or dark-coloured car.
Carol was also seen by several witnesses playing with a group of children in the street that morning.
They identified one little boy who was in what we termed in the day was a Red Indian outfit. He was with Carol at the time that she approached, or both of them approached a motor car.
Yeah.
He was suggesting it was a dark-coloured car.
He would be the last person to see her alive and the last person to see the killer. He's a key witness, isn't he?
I think totally
it's a shame he was only 6. Was he 6 at the time?
Would have been the same age.
It's a shame that he wasn't old enough to take a statement off him. I know that would be different now.
It's actually clarified in the report that the
What does it say, Steve?
The children were too young to provide statements.
He is vital. He has seen the car, he's seen the colour of the car, and he's seen the driver of that car.
Other witnesses were only able to give a sketchy description of the man in the car.
But from that fireman's statement, Jim, that he tends to suggest that the person sitting in the car, they referred to them in the day as commercial travellers.
And appeared not to enjoy the best of health, although he was clean-shaven.
This suspicious driver was now the prime suspect. Finding him became the focus of the inquiry. But after 2 weeks, the search for a missing child became a murder hunt. Carol's body was found 60 miles west of Cardiff, in a stream, near the remote village of Horeb. The news shook the community and her friends to the core.
When she'd been found, it was the realisation that she'd been taken and actually killed. And that was a big shock. There was great talk about how she was found so far away because it was assumed she'd be found nearer to home. I mean, the talk was, it's awful to talk about it because she's a little girl. Was she murdered in the area and then taken down later? Did she travel all those hours in the car with somebody that she didn't know but obviously trusted on what would have been a 4-hour car journey then, back in those days? No motorways. But it was just a terrible, terrible thing to a little child. For everyone involved, it would be wonderful if they could solve it and draw a line under it.
We're going over this river.
Yeah.
And it's in that field there, I'm guessing, or that field over there.
So what, through the...
Going to somewhere and getting a feel for where she's found is quite important.
The cold case team has come to the village of Horeb to try and find the exact location where Carol's body was found more than 60 years ago.
So where are we, Jim?
So I think, looking at this field, I think we need to head towards the left over there, because I think the stream is running down. Go in there with the photograph from 1959 and turning up there 60 years later and take another photograph. They're identical. It's like nothing's changed. So this is where she was found. Or do we assume that she's come out of the culvert, or she's been brought down the sides of this?
It'd be really difficult to clamber down here, carrying even a small child. It's going to be difficult getting down the incline.
So she
would have had more injuries, I think, if she'd been thrown over.
Thrown down. So the tunnel itself It's just a smooth, nothing in there. It's just a smooth, round, smooth tunnel. Goes in about a metre, and then it goes 45 degrees up.
All right. So
up to the
so
probably under the
gravity
road.
and the incline will bring things down.
Yeah. So that means then we need to find where she was put in.
This has always been at the back of my mind. It's not really the main reason for joining the police force. I think all police officers would like to detect every case that they're involved in. This is poignant for me because I knew the young girl, knew Carol Stevens.
Right, so this is above where we were just now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we see down there, the culvert goes up at an incline, it comes out on that side of the road.
Yeah. It was
This
a pull-in
is
area.
Pull-in,
Yeah.
isn't it? You could put. Nobody would think anything of it. There's a gate. They might think you're just going into the field, even if you parked up here. Well, this is the entrance, and look at the speed of the water.
You wouldn't have to remove a drain cover.
No
it's
drain
a
cover.
straightforward access from the road.
He's driven along here. He's pulled in off the road. It's a natural pulling. Carried her here, put her into the culvert at this point. He must have thought the chance of her ever being found here are minimal. I can't imagine he thought she was going to be found. Definitely not for a long time.
From here, you'd have to know about this.
Oh, you'd have to know about it.
You'd know the area, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
To be able to conceal Carol's body in that culvert, someone must have known about the culvert and the area, so therefore must have local knowledge. So this narrows down who the killer might be.
The cold case team are on the hunt for a child killer in a 60-year-old murder case. The team are now convinced Carol Ann Stevens' killer was a travelling salesman with a dark Morris Minor and had local knowledge of West Wales. Jerry and James are now on the trail of a suspect who was identified back in 1959. A local shopkeeper reported a suspicious conversation he'd had with a travelling salesman days before the murder.
The storekeeper had been told by the travelling salesman a story which he thought was strange, and it was about picking up a girl.
The suspicious salesman was identified as Ronald Edward Murray. Murray worked for Carson's confectionery company, delivering sweets to Cardiff and across West Wales, and drove a dark Morris Minor. Crucially, he had previously worked at the brickworks in the village of Horeb, less than 300 yards from where Carol's body was found. Armed with this knowledge, Jerry and James have come to where the suspect lived and where detectives came to question him in 1959.
So the Chief Inspector turns up. I have reason to believe you may be to assist with the inquiries and would like you to account for your movements on or about the date she disappeared, which was the 7th of April 1959 at Cardiff. Mary says, "You don't think I had anything to do with it, do you?" And then they ask then if they can have access to his car and take his vehicle. He comments, "It's the firm's car, but you can do what you want with it." And they gave him the keys to the car. So on the face of it, he was quite helpful.
Well, he was helpful, albeit denying that any involvement.
Not denying that.
After initially saying he was at home ill on the day Carol went missing, Murray then changed his story and admitted that he had actually travelled to Cardiff that day.
In his own words, he parks up in Robert Street, which is only just a short distance from Carol's house.
Well, it's where the kids were playing.
Exactly.
And then he identifies the children playing in the street, doesn't he?
According to Murray, he then drove home and spent the afternoon alone.
He's home between about 12:15, 12:30.
Yeah.
So no one accounts for his movements until his lad comes home.
From school at 3:45.
4:45, 15:45. And the pathologist saying that judging by Carol's stomach contents, time of death would have been any time between 12:15 and 2:45.
Yeah. It fits. There's that window, isn't there?
There is that window. And he can't account for his movements during that time.
No.
There was a lot of circumstantial evidence suggesting Ronald Murray's involvement in the alleged offence, but there wasn't that golden nugget, I would say, the forensic evidence. So there wasn't enough to charge.
But now Jerry and the team hope they can take the case further than the original investigation and finally prove or disprove Murray's involvement.
We can only hope with the advances in technology and in the science itself that we may get a breakthrough.
As the team focus their attention on modern forensics for the Carol Ann Stevens case, they're also hoping for a breakthrough in their trawl of over 300 historical sex crimes as part of Operation Dudley. DNA technology has already helped secure the conviction of rapist Anthony Carling, and they're confident of a breakthrough in another case from 40 years ago in the Swansea area.
Yeah, this is quite a nasty incident of the little girl who is raped, sexually assaulted. Appears there's realistic opportunities here of semen being found on the victim at the time. It's
horrific.
Horrific.
Okay.
Yeah. In particular with that offence of a male person attacking a girl, you just dread to think what he's done in the last 40 years.
Do you think significant improvements?
I think so.
DNA 17, sperm trap, or whatever?
Yeah.
See what we got in the archives and go from there, really.
Welcome to the Forensic Archive. I've managed to locate 4 packets of material.
Debbie and Steve have come to the top-secret National Forensic Archive. Here, over 4 million items of forensic evidence dating back to the 1930s from police forces across the UK are kept in storage. It's a treasure trove for cold case detectives. On its shelves is the evidence that with today's forensic science could finally hold the answers to hundreds of unsolved cases.
What we're able to do is dig into the past. Back in the 70s and 80s, the procedures and processes were very different. DNA wasn't something that was thought about. But what the investigators at the time had the foresight to think about was the fact that with the speed that forensic developments progress, that there would be something in the future that would mean those exhibits would be something that we could review again and get a result from it.
one slide reference again to JN2.
Hopefully, with the advances of forensic science, a lot more cases will be solved, again, to bring closure to victims and to let the perpetrators out there know that we're not going to let these things lie down. We're going to use every possible investigative technique to identify these perpetrators and bring them to justice.
The team head back to base with the samples from the sexual assault on the little girl. Cold case investigator James Phillips wants to get an expert opinion on whether the 40-year-old samples could still contain the attacker's DNA.
Cheek, ear and neck. We're at a stage now where DNA is just so sensitive. It doesn't take a great deal of contact for us to be able to obtain a DNA profile. So what they'll do is they'll soak the slide to remove the cover slip, and they'll swab the sample underneath the cover slip then, and then the swabs from these samples will be profiled for DNA.
It's an horrific incident for a young girl to go through. If it comes back with a profile, there'd be a good bet that he'd be on the database.
This case now rests with the scientists, as does their other investigation into the murder of 6-year-old Carol Ann Stevens. Senior forensic advisor David Thomas has been looking at the 60-year-old exhibits to assess their potential. They're hoping to find traces of DNA that would prove once and for all whether their prime suspect, travelling sweet salesman Ronald Murray, is the killer.
That is the right shoe at the scene of Carol Ann, which is in the water, or in the stream then. So it looked well warm, but the river may have done some of that to the damage.
I think it probably has. My recollection, and going back on a personal note, on the weekend before, she attended Sunday school with us, and they were new shoes.
Oh, were they? Now, a small child's cardigan, this is reference 0101-2. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm quite sure this is what Carol was wearing when she was abducted in Elephant Street. With a degree of potential.
If she was wearing it, it's touch. She's had to get out of if she was in the car, be moved from wherever into that culvert. There must have been some sort of touching around there.
Touch DNA is, say you grabbed me on my arm, you would leave DNA on my arm from sweat, skin cells, maybe even some hairs. And then we would sample that area where we know you have touched to recover the DNA that you've left on the surfaces.
Incredibly, police even preserved the confectionery found in Murray's car more than 60 years ago, in the hope that it would one day yield clues.
2 chocolates in green foil wrappers. Dorchester chocolate label
by Carson.
Do their sweets link up at all in any way, and can they link at all in any way to Carol Ann?
It could be something on that wrapper, that's what you're saying.
There are also dozens of Carol's belongings that could crucially finally provide that forensic link to Murray.
Albeit that Murray is our strong suspect for a number of different investigative reasons. But who's to say it's not somebody else? Whatever's there, let's go looking for it and searching it.
Yeah.
But I generally think there's some potential here.
Cold case investigator James Phillips has been waiting on the DNA results from the sexual assault on a little girl more than 40 years ago. It's not good news.
The report is coming back more or less saying that there's no further potential. However, the scientists, I'll read it out, and I think it's one of the first ones we've had, where he says, I recommend that these slides are retained and attempts to profile reconsidered in perhaps 3 to 5 years, pending any advances in DNA profiling technology, in particular, the extraction of DNA from slides. Gutted is the word, I think, for that one. But then you have your ups and downs, don't you? You have your good days and your bad days. You just got to carry on. You just got to, yeah. Yeah.
As one door closes, the team are hopeful that senior forensic scientist Claire Morse will have better luck as they begin the work of testing the 60-year-old evidence in the murder of Cardiff schoolgirl Carol Ann Stevens.
We will recover everything that we can from her items of clothing. We are really looking for DNA. If we can find DNA from somebody that's not Carol Ann, we need to try and find out who that person is. It could be a legitimate contact, but it could be an offender. So DNA from a touch or from blood or semen or saliva is going to be the easiest thing really for us to look at. It's a very difficult case. Carol Ann was found in a culvert. She was wet and had probably been in water for several days. The fact that she's been in water means that any DNA, blood, semen, saliva could have been lost. But there's always a chance with these things, and that's why we keep going with them.
With the forensic testing underway, Carol's school friend and veteran detective Jerry Blake has been digging deeper into the background of lead suspect Ronald Murray. What he's found is deeply troubling.
His wife had a tragic death. And in fact, the family are concerned that he had some dealing with that death. What had happened was that Ronald Murray had a young child, and he said they would play games turning the gas on and off. Murray says that the child had played the game on his mother. She suffocated with the gas from the gas stove. The officers who conducted the inquiries into that were clearly suspicious about the story given, but the verdict, it was an accidental death.
Jerry's research has turned up another death certificate. Murray died in 1973.
There are significant questions that we would have liked to ask Ronald Murray, because the style of questioning at the time is different to what we would do now. That doesn't mean to say that we're going to stop our investigation. Whilst he is a suspect, clearly from the evidence we've already got in our possession, it might not be Murray. So that must be a key driver for us to carry on. So if it's somebody else, that person may still be alive, that person may still be a risk, an ongoing risk to the public, to young girls. So it's absolutely vital that we continue our inquiries. So what we will be doing, we'll be putting a media appeal out asking for information.
It needs to go on out on a press release, it needs to go on the website, it needs to go on the socials.
There may be people who, for example, Mr. Murray may have spoken to and told people about what happened, what he did, if he is responsible. They might have the smallest piece of information, but that might be significant to us because of what we already know.
Next time. Time catches up with a vicious rapist on Operation Dudley.
Yes, it is.
You're under arrest on suspicion of rape that occurred on the 17th of August, 1980.
And a breakthrough when, after 60 years, a new witness comes forward in the Carol Ann Stevens case.
Well, the main memory is I remember the car door being opened and there was a white bag of sweets on the car seat.
He also suggested that there was a possibility that he may identify this man if he saw a photograph.
Are you able to identify any person on the film?
Yes.